Hello, how are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. How have you been?
Really good, really good. Enjoying the holiday season. Tons of good food, family, and some chilling as well.
That sounds good. Do you get time off of work?
Yeah, quite a few days. So I'm kind of like, now I'm at the point of like, twisting my thumbs because I'm like, okay, I've chilled out, I've caught up on sleep, I'm ready to get back into it.
You're like me. You can only do so much time off before you're like, I'm ready. Let's get back to
Yeah,
things.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, did you want to start by telling the anyone listening a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Ashley Huffman. I work at a company called Titan Haptics. We work on haptic motors and work with other companies to integrate them into their technology. So we work with partners like Striker VR, who have like these really badass blasters you can use in virtual reality and like kill monsters, and it's like huge recoil, and it just makes you feel like an amazing ultra human. I
Cool.
also do a lot of haptic stuff, so I'm kind of a haptics nerd. I have a podcast that I run called the Haptics Club, along with Razor, Unity, and Sense Glove. And then I have a haptics newsletter, just to go full trifecta of haptics geekdom, called All Things Haptics, where I try to share all the really crazy, cool stuff that's happening in the space, and that's kind of my area of expertise.
Awesome. It's so cool. I can't wait to ask you so many questions about haptics. I feel like whenever we talk, it's like more normal human, but I want to like dig into haptics, ask you all the things.
Heck yeah.
Um, what are you working on lately, first of all? What's your like kind of thing on the that you're currently doing?
I just wrapped up my last newsletter, which was super fun. So I was trying to like wrangle all the stuff that happened throughout the year, look at trends, what's been going on. So that was took up most of my time. That was my my holiday work. I was like, what can I do that was a bit of a break, and that was really good. So it's like going through all the past newsletters, seeing, automotive was really big for haptics this year, but it was like this mix of so they're trying to integrate haptics into seats so that you could feel alerts, or if like say you're just swerving a little bit off the road, you hit the rumble strip. Not only will you feel rumble on the road, but you'll feel it under your seat. So that's a really cool part of the haptics industry. But it's also like companies are putting in haptics and they're taking them out. So yeah, being able to like look at the past of what's been happening, trends in like robotics. It's just like so much fun. So that was one thing I just wrapped up. Among at Titan, we're heading to CES, so that's like tons of work around prepping demos and all that kind of like fun stuff around that.
That's so cool. So your newsletter covers basically just news in the industry. Is that sort of the focus of it?
Yeah, it's like all things, literally like everything I can find. So it's like there's if I found patents that are really cool. One of the recent ones was like Apple had a ring that is integrating haptics, which would be really cool for like their headset. So you can imagine that if since they don't have controllers with their headset, you'd be able to have a ring that had haptic feedback, so that when you wave things around or click, you'd feel like a button like press. So that's kind of like the what I'm hoping will happen with that patent, but it may turn into nothing. Who knows?
That's so
That's like the
cool.
nature of the patent world. So yeah, patents, some like really cool resources. So I'd like to look at academic papers, which is like the kind of like a weird side hustle hobby of like digging through to see what people are creating. There's tons around the idea of like using haptics for accessibility. So thinking about how you can use haptics for like expressing things like language or just like directionality. Yeah, really cool stuff. But everything I
Cool.
can find, I just like put into it and try to organize in a way where it's not just me smattering of ideas, and more of like, these are like the coolest things happening. These are some crazy patents I've found, and here's some resources that you could probably nerd out on that I found.
Wow, what a great way to stay updated too. Like you're just really digging into all these things. And I love that you're going directly to the source of the academic papers. Do you subscribe to specific like academic journals, or do you just look across all of them and see what comes out?
All of them typically.
Yeah.
So I get some pretty weird stuff. There's like, near death related materials. There's like, yeah, like kind of like creepy surgical related materials. But I just want to know. I'm just curious, like
With
how deep and
haptics?
far this with haptics. Yeah.
Near death experience with like what how does that even I cannot come up with a
Yeah.
relationship there. What
Yeah.
how do those connect?
That one I haven't dove into, just because it's like it's outside of my uh, area of expertise, or yeah, but it's cool. It's just cool nonetheless. The fact that people are just coming up with crazy ideas. The other one that's awesome is like people thinking about haptics in terms of packaging. That's an area I like to dig into. So there's companies that actually analyze materials so that you can actually replicate, like say like a really soft packaging. It's like a delicate feeling box, and so they're trying to like analyze different materials to see what would feel the best for people. So it's like if you're a, a super expensive cosmetics company, you obviously want to have like, really beautiful packaging, something that's like smooth and good shape. And so that is an area of haptics that's not in my, I'm like a hardware kind of girl. We talk about like haptic motors, but that's still fun because it's, you think about any user experience you have, it's like there's someone behind the scenes, that wizard who's like, what does this material feel like and how can we make this softer or like tougher or stiffer or, feel like dense. So yeah, that's like another area of haptics that's just wild.
That's so cool. I also just realized somebody, if anyone's listening and you're not familiar with haptics,
Mm.
um, maybe you could probably describe it better than I could to someone who's not familiar.
Yeah, for people that don't really know about haptics, you probably do. So when your phone vibrates or your gaming controller vibrates when you're playing a game, that's haptics. So there's this motor inside of it that's basically giving you that kind of like rumbly jiggle or like buzzing effect. So that's a haptic effect. Typically, it's done through some kind of motor. It's called a linear resonant actuator, which like bounces between springs, or a ERM, eccentric rotating mass, which basically spins to give you that haptic feel. So that's haptics. It's the vibration you feel when you're engaging with some kind of technology, and like it could be in your watch, it could be in your shoes, it could be pretty much in anything these days, which is really cool.
And so this like it's like material, um, the materials is also part of haptics as well.
Yeah, it's like an edge area of haptics where the companies that I interviewed one on Haptics Hub recently, where they actually have a robotic machine that analyzes materials so that you can actually create like a library of haptic effect based on like material type, and be able to like, you could say like a designer could be like, I want it to feel like this type of, and they have like this crazy vision of what they want this lipstick case to look and feel like, and this company would basically like go through the library and be like, oh, you mean this, and this like pop out like this, like it's number 6284997C, and it's like, yes, that's my vision. So yeah, it's an area of haptics that's probably not as known for being stereotypical haptics, but it's user experience and it's the way that you communicate using your hands, which is the magic of haptics. It's touch, it's engaging with things, whether it's electronic or analog.
Okay, interesting, interesting. I used to do like graphic design back in the day, and there's I just kind of touched on package design, but some of my fellow designer friends were doing package design, and that's
Yep.
so cool. And like I've seen the odd package, mostly on social media, where it like lights up when you open it. And there's all these cool
Mm.
tech getting involved in packaging too. So even though it is analog that you're describing, I can imagine like imagine if you like open something and it like shakes when you open it or like lights up, like all the things you could do. That's so fun.
Yeah,
My
that
god.
enchanting experience. Yeah, exactly. It's not just well, in the back in my day when you purchased like a cell phone, the box would be this like really cool unboxing experience. Like the One Plus had this like beautiful texture on the box that, and I would literally like keep a piece of it because I'm just like, oh, it's such a cool material. One day I will find a use for this beautiful material. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I
funny how
love
that works.
a box or like you said, a material that just feels nice. It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must be fun to do that kind of design work. Have there been things that you've come across when looking up the news and things for your newsletter and obviously for your own learning, um, that you were like, this is such a cool idea, but then it never took off? Do you see that a lot? Are there any that stand out?
Uh, there's always a few, but I understand why they can't. Because like there's like certain people that want to create like a alphabet of haptics, and it's kind of like the human brain can only kind of learn so many different patterns. So it's like I get why we haven't figured that out yet, but I think that'd be really cool if we could just kind of like speak to devices and communicate with them strictly through haptics. I think that'd be really interesting. It's kind of like it
Mm.
just becomes touch becomes a different type of language. Like we've got sign language, but and foul language. But yeah, I think that'd be interesting. Other ones are more related to like in virtual reality, where you've got like wearables and peripherals that help you feel things in different ways. So there's like suits and things, wearable wrist mark guards and things that can make you feel like tingly feelings, cold, like prickly, being squeezed. So I think to me, I'm hoping that comes out in the future, because think that's like such a value add to the virtual reality experience of like really engaging with your environment. I can imagine like for your game Strain, it's like you want people to feel a certain way as they're going through it, and maybe there's like certain textures or different like environments where you want them to feel like a different kind of experience, whether it's like windy or cold. And I think haptics is a cool way that you can do that without having like a huge fan in your house, like blowing air or smells at
That'd
you.
be cool too, though.
Yeah, that'd be cool too. Once I said it, I was like, dang, I kind of want that. But yeah, you get my point.
It's funny you say that. I saw this Kickstarter project ages ago, and it was like an attack. You probably saw it because you focus on VR a lot as well. It was like a attachment to the, I forget which headset, maybe multiple, and it was basically heated up smells. So it would be smells, and it also had like air that could be hot or cold blown at you, and even like spritz water, so you could feel like, oh, I'm going through the waterfall, I'm getting splashed, or like, it's warm or cold. But it got stopped, it got halted because a bunch of laws came up when it came to vaping, and it was like technically considered vape because they were like heating up oils for the smell. It's such a shame, but I was so
Yeah.
disappointed that that one like didn't become commercially available, because that would have been really cool, I think.
Yeah, that's super amazing because it's like you're getting so many different senses tantalized at the same time. I think the one that's similar to that that came out recently was, I can't remember the headset, but it was basically using ultraleap technology, which uses like air. So they have air that kind of like forces down and you can feel it. It feels textural. Um, and like ultrasonic, and they strapped it to the face of a visor of a headset, and basically pointed it at the mouth, and that they would do different frequencies of the air so that it felt like you were either like being kissed or like there was like movement on your face, which is really kind of wild. So that was like the goal of it. It was like it's like you can feel like you're being kissed in virtual reality. I didn't try it, but I think I love this kind of stuff because to me it's like why not? Like why
Yeah,
freaking not
yeah. That's
go
kind of
for it?
cute. Oh,
Yeah.
kisses. We've
Yeah.
invented kisses.
Like you
Very
can already
good.
do like, hats and things with like a haptic suit, like a B haptic suit. You could do like a cute like hug, like kick, those kind of things. But yeah, the face is a really curious one.
How do the suits work?
The suits, depending on which one, like B haptics is one that's really popular because it's got a bunch of game integrations, but they've got a bunch of actuators on it. And they program it so that during gameplay, for example, like Half Life Alyx, when you say pick up one of the like an ammo pack, you can store it in your backpack. That's kind of like the mechanism of how to like store things in Half-Life Alyx is put it behind you and it goes into your backpack, and you could feel the haptics go down your back as you're putting like something into your backpack. So that's one way. Raindrops like hit you on the sides, on your chest. Um, what else? Like, yeah, if you're shot, like it feels like you're being shot. So they use motors to kind of power that experience. Other companies use like electromagnetic type of properties. So Alex Ho is um, like a health product people use, where it's essentially like working your muscles using like electricity, right?
Hmm.
So some vests use that type of technology, and they advertise things like it feels like you're being stabbed or punched. So that's another layer of immersion, depending on your enjoyment of pain or pleasure, however that works for each
Right.
person.
It's kind of funny. Like you'd think we would focus on like kisses more, but like no,
Yeah,
no. I want to feel that knife going to me
yeah,
like down. Like I saw
yeah.
this like documentary a little like ages ago. I think it might be what you're talking about, where somebody like got shot and it like was so severe that they were like, yeah, I don't really want to use that. Like it's a little bit too much. But it would
Yeah,
make
it's
the game feel
intense.
so much more intense. Like you would probably get really into it if you really felt the shock of getting uh attacked in one way or another. It'd
Yeah,
be pretty
I'd be
cool.
curious to see like if you had the vest or like shirt on, whatever it is, the suit on, and if your gameplay would get better or worse. So it's like if it felt really
Mm.
bad to get shot, like would that increase your abilities, like, or would you just like I don't know, curl up in a ball and die? I don't know. It could go either way. It could go
That's a
either
good
way.
question. How accessible are these suits?
For people that are into VR, pretty accessible. Like people that purchase like a $500 headset, another 300, $250 is like pretty accessible. And then it goes to like crazy, super expensive, like full body suits. And these are like, hundreds or like few 100,000, 50,000. They're like, they get crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, it ranges.
Did you watch Upload?
Oh, yes. Yes, I did.
Good, isn't it?
Yeah,
um,
that haptic suit, like the way that she had to like clean it out, and she lived in it was amazing. But you can imagine that, right? It's like the holodecks from Star Trek, but like more realistic because it's like you've got to be able to like move around and feel something, and you want to be engaged as well. So yeah, that's a really great example of like a full suit and like what realistically that experience is gonna be like.
they made it so unappealing. If anyone hasn't seen the show, like it's
Mhm.
like just to use in the bathtub, and like you're not
Yeah,
really not clear exactly how it works, but it's like it looks
yeah,
like a rubber suit. It looks
yeah.
super not fun to be in.
It's got a bunch of like little feelies for,
Yeah.
yeah, for immersion, I guess we'll say.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. Um, okay, there's also like the Ready Player One suit, right? That's
Yeah.
also you probably get asked about that all the time.
Yeah, constantly. But I think that's for anyone who's been in VR, likes VR, has had that epiphany moment of how just great virtual reality could be. It makes sense. It's like you want to be fully immersed, you want to feel it, you want to see it, you want to just completely be in that moment. So yeah, it's there. Those suits exist. You can get like a full haptic suit. People are making shoes. You've got like Cat, who has like the walking kind of mechanism that you strap into. You've got like blasters like Striker. So I think it's all kind of in different stages, but it's kind of all coming together despite the wildness of the virtual reality industry. Wherever you're looking and whoever you're talking to, it's always like the Wild West. But yeah, it's awesome to see that people really care about actually building these type of crazy contraptions and they want to bring that kind of vision to life. It's like when I grew up, it was like the Jetsons was the cartoon I watched as a kid. And
Yeah.
it's like, flying ship, doesn't require fuel. Like you've got these cool contraptions in your house that just kind of like worked, technology that just kind of like supported you daily. It wasn't like crazy in your face. It wasn't doing anything wacky. It was just like you need the toaster. The toaster kind of like comes up. You want to like watch TV, the TV comes up. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing with virtual reality and these type of peripherals is like just as the need kind of comes up, someone's got a crazy idea. There's like quite a few people from academia to consumer tech working on them, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I don't know if this has been like studied or looked into. I'm sure it has been. But I've heard that like a lot of inventions have been inspired by shows like you said, like the Jetsons or the communicators in Star Trek, and a lot of the different things that we see sci-fi and we're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this or that? And then it's like, well, how do we reverse engineer that? How can we make that? How far away are we? So it's super cool to hear that people are looking at these suits and like, okay, well, we have A, B, and C. We how close can we get? Sounds like it's
Yeah.
still quite expensive to get anything. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of the ones you're describing, like, are those ones accessible with just like a few actuators on it?
Yeah, so it's like the kind of like 250, kind of like 300 up to like 600 mark. So it's like not cheap, but I think for someone who's like really serious about it, it's just like buying the like a different mount for your head because you want it to, feel good for playing for like a few hours. Some people purchase like, a little golf club when they play like a bunch of, mini putt. So I think it's just a matter of like how into it you want to get. There's like always niches for different types of people. So yeah, they're definitely out there. So Haptics is one that has a bunch of different types of kind of like consumer grade, like haptic specific products. It's like a company out of Korea doing really cool stuff.
That's so cool. And then, so Titan Haptics, do you guys make the hardware for it, or like how do you guys? What's your involvement with the haptics?
Yeah, so we are kind of like a haptic motor company at heart. So we created like a new type of haptic motor that's based off of magnetism. So it's essentially this like held in a magnetic chamber, and there's a like a hammer that moves back and forth, and that's where you get that wobble feeling. And we create the motor, we create like firmware, software, just the way that someone can easily integrate it into their tech. So we work with all different types of companies across the industry to add tech to what they're working on. And kind of like our kind of claim to fame is it's high definition. So if you want to have something that's like the deep rumble you'd get from your gaming controller, we can do that. Or if you want something kind of like high pitched and buzzy like your smartphone, it can do that too. So it's like it can do a whole bunch of different feelings. And the benefit is if you've got this kind of like crazy idea of what something should feel like, it's much easier to convey it than having to like change your idea into like, well, how do I convert that idea into like just low rumbles in some way? or just like high pitched buzzing. So really, it's like creates like an orchestra of opportunity in terms of like, you know, turning sound or turning some kind of like coding effect into like some real tactile experience that someone can experience, whether it's a game or in your car, those types of things.
That's really cool. And so you guys make a specific type of actuator. How like does the size change depending what you're integrating it into? The size
Yeah,
of
for
the
sure.
yeah.
Yes, for sure. So it's got to fit within like certain form factors. Like in it's like say VR controllers. There's not a whole bunch of space, right? Even with gaming controllers. So we have like small. Got like a little motor here for like size context. So like super teeny. So this could fit into something like a game controller, or like even like headphones. So the you can scale it to be like larger. So if you need something like the striker experience, like a virtual reality experience, you want it to be like kind of hefty and like give you some punch. You want to feel like recoil, those types of things. So yeah, so it can be super tiny, to be super large, whatever the kind of use case is. But yes, it's got to like fit within the form factor, but in a way that provides the consumer value. Because I think at this point we're kind of used to having haptics, especially in phones. Like 90% of phones have haptics. Gaming controllers, if you've had a gaming controller without haptics, it's like it's super weird. I don't know if you've the last time you've played with one where it's just like what is it like what is it what is it even doing? What has it been happening with this? And what's your point of view?
Why am I even holding this anyway?
Yeah, yeah.
No, I hear you. I hear you. So, like with the ring, how small does it get to be on the size of a ring?
Yeah, for a ring, you need like a really specific type of motor, something that like is like super tiny. That's like a kind of completely different types of technology. It's called a piezo actuator, and that one's super tiny. And they're known for being like great at a specific type of frequency, but it's like each motor has like a benefit and kind of like a limitation. So really, for someone who's like trying to create a product, you kind of have to go through this like gambit of like how much battery life can I utilize? How much like haptic effect do I really need? Like what kind of range do I want? So it really is like a interesting art of, if you're creating a product, it's like what's the end consumer experience that I want and like how do I get there? So yeah, the haptics industry is like amazing, but at the same time, it can be really complicated for someone just coming in because
Mm.
it's not a field where there's very few hapticians. I would say people that are like very specific to this industry. Otherwise, it's developers have to deal with haptics, or like you bring in like a sound guy and it's like you do the haptics. And rarely do you have like a haptic specific person coming in like I am your haptics expert. Like here's everything you need to know. Like yeah, it just doesn't really happen.
Huh. That's so. I'm sure it will probably become like more common to have people who are specialized in haptics
Yeah.
as there's more and more cool like hardware that comes out. I've heard of chairs like that have haptic feedback, right? Those are those common, would you say?
They're pretty common nowadays, like gaming chairs, or like there's like sim rigs that have haptics as well. I think there's companies like D-Box who do like theater seats that have haptics. And I don't know if you've
Oh,
ever been in one of those, but they like tilt, like rock, and then they like super rumble.
okay.
And so when you're watching a movie, they have I can't remember what their most popular movie was. I think it was Super Mario. So you can
Hmm.
imagine like as the movie's going, like certain elements just like are super boing. Like if he jumps up and he hits like the question mark, like you would feel like do 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 do, and they would like rumble through your body. So yeah,
Cool.
there's some pretty interesting use cases for seats, not just movies, but like music, gaming. Yeah, pretty fun stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. Is electricity ever used? Like shocks?
Definitely in like the kind of wearable space that's becoming more popular, but I think it's still it was in like the academic world for a long time, but I think the transition between like a consumer product that is like safe and many people can use is still like this weird, it's in a kind of a gray area because when you like introduce shock, it's like how much can you take versus like
Hmm.
someone who's like 600 pounds? How about someone who's like 4 feet versus 6 feet? What about someone who's got like thick skin versus thin skin? Someone who's like prone to like it could be anything. So it's like there's like this weird area with that specialization of haptics where I think it's still kind of like trying to be figured out, and it makes sense. Like haptics itself is something where it's a very like user eccentric like experience. Like some people love haptics, Like maybe you
Mhm.
want your butt rumbled like crazy, but some people are like, I want minimal butt rumble, or I want, for my controller, I want like max, like I want my hands to fall off with haptics. Other people are like, turn that crap off. Like I hate haptics.
Huh.
So it's kind of like a strange space where, as like a person creating content, it's you have to be like really. I don't even have to tell you. You create games, like you probably know where some people like love certain things, and other people hate certain things. I don't know if you have like an example in like your own experience where you're like trying to like deal with that art of like what humans are like and don't like, and
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, there's so many things that I mean, at the end of the day, I guess it could be just an adjustment that people personalize in their games, the same way you personalize like FOV or mouse sensitivity or camera
yeah,
sensitivity or like all those types of things that people have preferences over, even like lightness, darkness, all that stuff, right? So
yeah.
yeah, I guess haptics is just another setting that people would.
On off toggle, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. What are like some of the cool things you've worked on at the company?
Ooh, probably the one of the coolest things is a lightsaber. It's definitely up there with like the coolest things. I tease my coworkers when they're working on it because I'm like, "Oh, poor you! You're working on like a lightsaber as a job." Like, but yeah, that is super enchanting. I've also like project inaccessibility, which is really cool. So people that are creating like vests that they can utilize as part of like workshops and training for folks that have some like disabilities, or just like have don't have use of like some of their extremities, like that kind of stuff. I just love, because you're turning haptics into something that people expect as like, oh, it's just in your phone and your controller, into something that could literally change someone's life, make it easier, better, faster, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Have you seen the show C? It's
See.
like a apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic world, and nobody has vision. And it brings me back to this. You mentioned a language, and in this world, they instead of obviously they can't read, so they have like a string and they tie knots along the string, and they can like read a message through that, and they can communicate through that. I thought that was a
Cool.
really creative way to do something like that. Have you heard of ways that people have thought of doing this language or ways of kind of communicating through haptics?
I think I have, but they're just trying to figure out like how to do it in a way where you can convey information that's not information overload. So it's like Braille is a good example of like someone that it's like refined experience that is like down to an art. With haptics, it's like how it's like I've seen it done in like buzzes, different like sequences, treated come more like music. So remembering patterns, that's another way to do it, to be more like literal, of like more like SOS. So, but I haven't seen anything that I would be able to take on a grasp myself. So yeah, but if something pops up, I will of course share it in my newsletter with the greater community, because it's a really interesting space. But it's like a hot debate. Like a lot of the hapticians and academics like fight over it. It's like one of those subjects that they like grown ass people will fight over. They're like, no, that's like they will never happen. No, it's the dumbest thing ever. We'll never come up with a language. And then you've got the people who are like, yes, I believe in this. This will be the future. So yeah, it's one of those strange haptic areas where yeah, people nerd out pretty hardcore.
That's so interesting. I never even considered that.
Yeah.
What are other things that uh what are areas that could have haptics that don't? Like you mentioned cars. I would not have thought of that. There must be other areas, and like even we talked about packaging. Like, are there things that have come up while you're like learning, or are there things that are just starting to get haptics that have a lot of potential to implement them?
Let's see.
I
They're
don't mean to
just
put
kind
you
of.
on the spot.
No, no, no. Like it's such a great question. I'm just like, oh, all these ideas, like all
Yeah.
these things I've seen. Yeah, like laptops. We're starting to see like the touchpad utilize haptics, which is really cool. Like HP.
Mm.
Um, in terms of other types of things, like we're seeing it in like headphones more so. That's one of those things where it kind of came out once and kind of disappeared. It really isn't anything. So it's like anything that you could possibly like interact with, you can have haptics. Another one, interestingly enough, was like a camera. So they integrated haptics as a way where you could actually feel the kind of like trigger as you're the shutter, in a way that doesn't have sound. So I was like, that's an interesting use of haptics.
That is
Yeah,
interesting. Kind of makes
very
it more
curious.
feel like the old analog ones more. Is that kind of the idea?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the key.
Ah,
That's the key. That's kind of the
cool.
funny part too about haptics in cars too, where it's like you've got companies who are like removing buttons, but they're using haptics to make it feel like a button. So it's like we kind of go full circle with the like old school and new school. It's like take it out, but put it back in.
That's so interesting. Yeah, buttons are like really satisfying when there's haptics.
Yeah,
Everything's satisfying with haptic
yeah,
feedback. Oh
yeah,
my God.
exactly. Like a nice toggle. If you get it like a nice toggle with haptics, like it's like an old fashioned lock. Yeah, that's brilliant. I'd love a good button.
Ooh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Does it change your perspective like outside of work when you look at things? Do you think about haptics outside of work?
I
Yeah.
definitely do. I really care about the user experience of just like I'm just a curious like tech person. Like I love all tech, so it's like I really think about it as I'm using it of like how it could be used more, how it could be used like less. Um, yeah, it's just funny. It's just one of those things you can't unsee. It's like you probably imagine with you like developing a game. Like now that you play other games, you're just like you can't unsee like thinking how they made it or like why they did made a certain decision. So yeah, same with me. Of like yeah, like maybe they could have used like a little different type of haptic, and it would have felt like maybe better with like this use case. So yeah, it's like I'm just like constantly thinking of nerdy ways you could use haptics. Like, why doesn't this have haptics? Or like, maybe this shouldn't. Maybe it shouldn't have haptics. Yeah.
Right. Do you think like general clothing will have haptics ever?
I feel like it probably will eventually. Like the user experience of like adding haptics as like a tactile experience, like immersive makes sense, right? Sort of like if you're playing a game. But who knows? Maybe it'll be like you won't have any like buttons anymore. It'll just be like these like fake buttons that'll have a haptic effect. That seems like a redundant use of haptics, but
That's
hey,
funny.
what 2050 we'll see
Yeah,
what happens.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So you do a number of things, as you mentioned. You're involved in so many things. How do you like how do you stay organized with your work, with your outside of work stuff? You have really cool hobbies too, which I also want to dig into. How do you stay organized, first of all?
Yeah, organization's key, right? So I do basically use like a Scrum organization for pretty much my personal life and work life. So making sure that I have like a kind of like a debrief at the end of a week. I think about like all the things that I want to accomplish. I organize them into like a sprint essentially, and I set my calendar, block off time, and basically just make sure that I allot myself like enough personal and work time that I can, do all these kind of crazy things. Considering like prepping for like a podcast, making sure that I've like, had some questions prepped, like making sure that I just bake in time for myself so that I don't actually, lose my mind with all the things that I am working on.
Yeah. And so how do you spend personal time?
Personal time is a big mixed bag. I do a lot of writing for fun for sure on the side. I like cars an awful lot, so some of my side hustle includes writing about cars. And then I do when it's summertime, I like to race my car. And then in the winter now I'm doing eSim, so I'm like doing a simulated racing, so I can just keep my skills going. At least that's the idea. Yeah.
It's cool. So like what kind I've got a lot of questions. What tell me more about the simulated racing. How does that work?
So I've got essentially I use like a Logitech steering wheel and pedals, which utilizes haptics as well, and that way you can get the feel of like when you're skidding or your wheels are you're just like driving too fast and your wheels are slipping, those kind of things. And then I can use my headset, my VR headset, my Quest 2. To play in virtual reality, which is awesome. So you could use things like Assetto Corsa or iRacing, which is like two programs that allow you to do virtual reality racing. And I just like I'm like locked into this basically this like one area where I just fully am in racing mode. So it's like I'm literally wearing like my race shoes and I'm just like fully into it. I don't have a race sim in terms of like that has haptics other than the steering wheel and the pedals. There are some that you can do that have like haptics in like the seats. You've got like modulation to go, as close as you can to like the real racing experience. But this, racing is just, yeah, probably one of my favorite hobbies just for don't know, sheer hooliganing. As a former motorcyclist, you get me. Where you that the feeling of freedom and like and just enjoying the air and just the control.
Yeah, yeah, that um feels like it really brings you into the present moment, which is like I think one of the like the
Yeah,
exhilaration of it, you're like really there, which is sometimes hard to do, especially if you're
yeah,
like us, where we both, we get so invested in our work and we think of all these
yeah,
things all the time. It's nice to just be like really present. So I totally
yeah.
hear you. What did you mention? Sorry if I missed it. Did you say the name of the like racing simulation that you? Is it like a game? Is like a simulation? Like what do you play or
Oh yeah,
race?
so the simulator like mechanicals itself, the steering wheel and the pedals are like Logitech. There's like a
Hmm.
bunch of companies that offer these. There's like Thrustmaster. There's another one, and then the programs that I use to race are Assetto Corsa, and then there's also iRacing. So they are just like different types of racing. iRacing is used by like professional racers,
Oh,
so they're
cool.
pretty serious. So like you can't get into like accidents, you can't smash people, which is like it's like the hardcores. So that one's a bit tough. But Assetto, I'm just like hop into like a Lambo and just race my heart out.
That's cool. But wait a minute, you can't get into accidents. Wouldn't that shouldn't that be a big part of the realism? Is that you can get into
Yeah,
accidents?
yeah, that one's where it actually matters. So if like you get into accidents, it affects your rating, and then you can't race like with certain tracks or like around certain people. So it's like, you
Oh.
know, yeah, it's pretty hardcore that way.
I
But
see
really
what you
fun.
mean. So like if you do get into an accident, like you're in a lot of trouble here.
You're in a
That's
lot of trouble. Yeah, it's like you peasants get off the road, go back to like a peasant track. Yeah.
that's so cool. And is this something that you play like is it a single player game or is do you play like competitively against other people doing this?
Yeah, you can play competitively. Right now, I'm just doing kind of like single player, like just enjoying myself, not too tense, just racing for the fun of it. And yeah, it's been great, honestly. Highly recommend anyone who's got to try autocross in the summer, if you've got a car that you want to learn how to drive. But in terms of like racing, like there are people who've been sim racers who've turned into like real like F1 like style racing. So I think it's
Cool.
definitely possible to translate skills no matter what you're doing, from gaming to like real racing, which is awesome. Same with like go-karting.
Oh, that's so cool. And I a little while ago I like went on one of those arcade like motorcycles and when like did a little race, I was like, this is actually really fun. Like I want like a more serious version of those. Do you know if that exists? Because that would be so fun.
I don't know, but if it does, I am with you, because yeah, those are sick. Because I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever been. I've been on the back of a motorcycle for racing. I've never actually raced a motorcycle, and it's wild. It's terrifying. So I think that's a great alternative. Until having that's where you need that full bodysuit.
Yeah. No, I haven't raced before, and like you said, you need like the gear you need to get into it.
Yeah,
It's a pretty serious thing. It would be pretty fun though.
that'd be fun. Yeah, but I'm totally down if someone's out there and hears this and knows of this kind of simulator for bike
Yeah,
racing,
we
please
want to
invite
play.
us. We will come.
Yeah, let us come. So, tell me about motocross.
So this is a passion I've had for some time. It's kind of wild. Didn't really think I'd get into it, but it's so good. So essentially, you can have any kind of car you want. I drove a Mustang. That's my kind of daily and racing car, slightly modified for autocross. But you're on this course that's set up, and it's basically a single person race, and you're using your times against other people that have similarly modified cars. And so one of my favorite courses was on a NASA track. Basically, it's like an old airfield. That's not being used anymore. And they just set up cones with like a crazy course that you have to go around. So like eight tight curves, all types of things. It's like around a minute timing wise of like how long it takes to get through, and it's really testing your ability to drive quickly but drive in a way that you can't hit any cones, otherwise you get penalized with time. And it's so fun. It's like the best way to learn how to drive your car in a quick way, that like you'll learn how to understeer, oversteer, how quickly it brakes, how much fun you can have without it spinning out on you entirely. It's awesome. Highly recommend it.
Whoa! And did I hear you right? Did you say the course is only 1 minute?
Yeah, it's super short usually, so it's like pretty quick, but that's kind of like the fun of it, where you just like you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of time to learn it. and you just like race it, and every time you get a few laps in between. It's like you race and you brake and you race and you brake, and each time it's like you're trying to figure out like where you can pick up speed, and that's kind of like the fun part of like I tend to hit many cones. So I was known. I think I've got a little bit of a trophy of like hitting the most cones, just because like, I don't care if I hit cones. Sometimes I really just want to like push my car and see where the kind of like limits are. It's like, could I just like give it a little bit more, and and make it? And it's like, no. It turns out you can't. It's fine.
Oh, that's
that's,
so
that's
cool.
yeah, that's half the fun.
And I think that is it makes sense for it to be shorter because like it's not like you're there for like months on end where you're really learning the course. You're just there.
Yeah.
I don't know how you spend like a day there. Maybe you go for a few days. Is that how that
Yeah,
works?
it's usually like a day, and then
Yeah.
yeah, it's like one course someone sets up, and then the next event, which is like every other week or so, it's like a course altogether. So someone's like, at home devising some crazy course that's like, can Ashley's Mustang fit through this? It's maybe it's good for like a Miata, but terrible for a Mustang, and that's I love that. That's really cool. I can
That's
appreciate that.
really cool.
Yeah, fun stuff.
How is it dangerous to do this?
I would say no, only because they usually do it in a place where there's just like nothing else. Maybe there's like some like telephone poles or something that they usually try to avoid. So they try to make it as safe as humanly possible, but it's racing, so stuff has happened. I've seen an accident once. I've seen someone's tire fly off into oblivion. So it's like anything else. You kind of, decide if it's worth the risk for you. And for me, it's like, yeah, definitely. I love it. Like the speed and the ability to just, like disconnect and be like really honed in on this like one thing of, trying to kick my butt and whoever's butt I'm trying to kick, the other Mustangs or, BRZ, whatever it is.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So you do writing around this as well.
Yeah, I love writing about just like strange things about whether it's car trends or just some of like the weird things like people don't know. One of the articles I wrote about was like Canadian car trends, like things that or like Canadians had before Americans, just like oddities that people wouldn't really think about. But
Hmm.
I'm like why? I'm always like why is it like this?
I
And
know, and
that's
even like
where
that that's an interesting topic. I feel like that could apply to so many different fields. Like, why is it different in US and Canada? Usually legal reasons, right? A lot of the
yeah,
time, I imagine. Yeah.
yeah, definitely
But
legal
then it's like,
reasons.
why is that law here and not next door? Like, why is that? So that's yeah,
Yeah,
that's a fun
yeah, that
article.
translates across everything, especially food. It's funny.
Yeah. So, where do these articles go when you write them?
Typically, like Auto Traders, one of the publications I work on,
Cool.
or I've got my own Medium where I just kind of share my own stuff. Yeah,
So cool. Do you do other kind of writing too?
as much as I can. I love writing. It's kind of like my outlet. So anything. It could be I write like a screenplay or like a book, whatever it is. A lot of this stuff I just kind of like hoard in pages that people may never see. But I think writing is just the way I express myself. I'm a big introvert, so it's tough for me to like be around people and be like, yay! But when I'm writing, I'm just in my like super happy place, just like a little hobbit.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have like ongoing like stories or novels or worlds that you're creating?
I'm working on one that has been on my mind for a very long time, which is like the people's understanding, a little cliche, of like the idea of like heaven and hell, but more from a perspective of like earthly. So that's kind of like this idea I've been playing with. So it's not related to like biblical at all. It's just more of the idea of like good and bad and people's perception of that and what it kind of means. That's a fun one.
Hmm. It sounds like an interesting theme to explore. Yeah, writing is fun. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, this would be such a cool like science fiction, like this concept. Like I want to, I need to write it into a fictional world just to like imagine how it would play out if
Ooh.
this technology was invented or this became accessible to everybody or if aliens were like it's random like whatever
Yeah,
thing, like how would that play out? What would that actually look like? And if you sit down and like write it out, it's such a fun process to be creative. And it's a little
so
bit
true.
easier than a lot of other mediums, like trying to make an entire game versus like writing it down.
That's fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially with ChatGPT, right? It's like you can take an idea and you're like, I don't have a lot of time for this, but it's a tidbit of something that I think there's something here that's kind of fun. You just kind of run with it through ChatGPT to see like, where could this possibly go? And yeah,
Mm.
there's something really magical about that. that I've been doing lately. It's like rather than just taking the idea of like storing it in like some spreadsheet and maybe I'll never come back to it. I just kind of like use that as a venue, and it kind of either I'm like that was a terrible idea and I'm never going to do that again, or it'll inspire something else inevitably.
Hmm. That leads me to the question: how are you using AI with your work, with your life? I'm obviously you're using it to some extent. What do you?
Yeah,
Yeah. What are your
tons,
thoughts on it?
tons, constantly, constantly,
Yeah.
constantly, constantly for so many things. Yeah, it is such a blessing, honestly. Everything from like headlines, writing headlines is a big one. That's like my least favorite activity because it's just
Mhm.
like I'm usually terrible at that. Um, Organization, coming up with frameworks is a really good one. So it's like if you have an idea for just even a project, something that you're looking to like do, creating a base framework using ChatGPT is awesome. It usually comes up with like something that would have taken me a few hours of like beating myself up over like I don't know, this is like too much or it's too little or maybe I need to add more, and it's like no, it's just here's a framework to work with. Mid Journey for imagery for sure, for basically almost all the imagery I do. It's for my newsletters. Is that
Oh, that would be great because I'm sure a lot of these concepts don't exist physically yet, like you said with patents and stuff. I mean, you could probably, I
yeah,
don't know if there's images with the patents, usually there is, right?
yeah.
But it's kind of cool to like, you could bring it to life in like this hypothetical way. That's such a perfect use for Mid Journey. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's super
Nice.
cool. Yeah, my I've done some where it's like a beating heart, which is really cool, or just using haptic effects, like something that visualizes haptic effects in a way on top of a technology that like you wouldn't really expect. I love doing that. So yeah, huge fan of that. Huge
Cool.
hack.
Cool. So do you have like concerns around it? Do you think it's dangerous? Do you think, are you accelerationist? Like what's your stance on it all? What's your thoughts?
I I think there's concerns with pretty much everything. There's still concerns with the internet, fundamentally, but it is such a brilliant way to accelerate what we're trying to work on, things we're thinking about, what we want to do. Where I think it's something we should embrace, and then in terms of the downsides, like yeah, there's a lot of talks around like intellectual property, yeah, ownership of materials, like what we leverage. But at the same time, it's like fundamentally everything I've ever done is thanks to something someone else has done. Nothing I've done is unique. It's a derivative of what I've learned, whether it's people, whether it's places I've been to, it's games I've played, it's products I've seen and touched. It's like everything's an inspiration, and so I kind of see it that way to much degree.
That's a good perspective actually. That's very true. Yeah. Even like with science, like you don't, unless you're Isaac Newton and you invent calculus so that you can get your point across with physics, but
Yeah,
most
yeah,
people don't invent an entire type of math to explain
yeah.
something. So they have to, like you said, go from existing things. That's yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Hmm. You had some topics. Let me take a look at them.
I'm curious about like your perspective on it for like your game, and like what are your thoughts around it? Because it's
Oh
like one of those
yeah.
things also where it's like there's some like contention too of like its use. It's like if you use it, it's like it's bad, and like
Oh well, with AI, I'm like really torn. Like I think that there's like bigger concerns around AI because I don't know if we even like fully understand it or its capabilities and it's already in the hands of so many people. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
I know there's a lot of really cool people doing cool and positive things, but there's also like there's some not so positive people out there who want to do
that's
bad
fair.
things. So like
That's fair.
hopefully you know, hopefully it's not gonna go that way. I don't know. It's definitely feels like really precarious route that we're taking with it though. Like we don't I don't know really, it's hard to predict what's going to happen. It's hard to
Yeah.
predict the good things are going to happen. It's hard to even predict what could possibly go wrong with it. So there I think that there's like it's like I'm very excited about it, but I'm also like have some concern around it too. I even when it comes to like my game, I'm avoiding using it because not just with what people would do with it, I'm concerned, but like with my game, I would like to use it, but I don't want to jeopardize the game with it. I like if it's something I could replace, maybe it's not a big deal. But I know Valve is already not wanting games with AI on
Yeah.
Steam. which I don't think they're really enforcing, but it's something that I'm like a little bit worried to, like if I'm not using it now, maybe it's better to not use it so that I don't have to like go back and change things if they do like
Yeah.
really um, crack down on it. Um, so I'm kind of avoiding it when it comes to making my game, but I am using it for things like, uh, honestly, I don't really use it as much as I could. I use it for things like my curiosity is like I always go down these like rabbit holes of like, why is this like this? How does this work? How does that work? And then it like explains it to me. It's so much more concise than trying to Google it or read
Yeah.
multiple Wikipedia articles.
Amen.
It's really good at breaking things down. I also find it's not really that great at like being really creative. It can be creative to an extent, but I feel like it doesn't really like once you've tried a few things, if you really want to get like really weird, maybe I'm just too weird. I just want weird ideas in writing, but like it kind of keeps rehashing the same kind of
Yeah.
thing, and it's often
Yeah.
I think it's also often based off of existing material. So it's like, well, like that's already been done. That's already been done. That's already been done. Like I want to go more weird. It's like
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where like the human creativity and ingenuity comes in is the weird factor. It's like that's what it doesn't have. It has like cookie cutter and it kind of like tries to fit things within the cookie cutter it feels like. But yeah, I agree. That's where it's not so great as like creative ideas. It's more of just like here's what I know and here's a rehash of it and like in like a nice like yay type of way. Many explanation marks. All the
Yeah.
explanation marks.
Oh, you know what else I've been using it for?
Mhm.
I love Midjourney. Like it's so fun to just make things, see what generates from different keywords.
Yeah,
But
heck yeah.
I like interior design. I like to I've
Mm.
been like painting things, just doing some, fixes here and there in my place. And it's so good to come up with ideas for like um a style. And then I can like work backwards and be like, okay, that's like the ultimate if you had the perfect architecture for the style I want. And now it's like, now how do I do like a more casual
Mm.
version of that? The only
Cool.
downside to that is like it generates this really cool living room, and I'm like, that's like my dream living room. That'd be perfect. I'm like, how do I get that couch? Like that couch doesn't exist in real
Yeah,
life.
it's
Can
true.
you get
Yeah.
custom couches and like show them a mid-journey generation? Like
Yeah.
this one.
Just someone make this. Please make this. Yeah.
Yeah.
3D, huge 3D printer. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, imagine 3D printing a couch. That'd be cool. Hmm. Maybe one day. Do you have a 3D
Everyone.
printer? Have you messed around with one?
Not at home, but we definitely have it at work, which is super handy. So
Ooh,
I just yeah, it's brilliant, but definitely not big enough to make a couch. Sorry. If we
darn.
did, I would for you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, what kind of stuff? Like, do you make a lot? You must make all kinds of weird prototypes. You guys just like
Yeah.
mess around and experiment with things?
Yeah, tons of prototypes. So essentially, if we've got like a customer who wants to integrate, then we would create like a version that they can use as like a demonstrator. Because we're like the haptics experts, so we need to be able to provide kind of like the best haptic experience possible, and then they kind of mull it over internally, determine kind of what they want to do, and that's yeah. So tons of prototypes. We've haptified anything, like and everything. Like we had a for Halloween, we haptified this like ugly head, like baby head on like a hand, and it was like the creepiest. I don't. It was the creepiest, and it just like would like basically just bash on this baby head, just like walking across the desk, like served no purpose. Had it, we named it.
Oh, how nice.
So, but yeah, we really like create the coolest stuff and just be able to like quickly 3D print stuff to just create like a model of it or like a first kind of draft of it is yeah super handy. So hugely awesome to have a 3D printer. Game changer.
That that sounds like a fun workspace to be in.
Oh
That
yeah,
sounds like a really
yeah.
fun
It
workspace.
is. It is actually. It's like so many different tools. Now we have a bunch of crafting supplies. We did a Halloween, not a Halloween, a Christmas holiday experience of creating ugly sweaters. So I bought a bunch of like really terrible crafts of like glitter, paint, just like as much stuff you could use to make like an ugly sweater. So now the whole place is covered in basically glitter.
Arts
So
and
now
crafts.
it's we've got like tools, haptics and glitter.
Haptics and glitter and tools. Sounds
Yeah,
fantastic.
it sounds great, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a wonderland. It's the wonderland.
Yeah, now that I think about it, like Haptics is it's a very personal field because it's not like if you're making an ugly sweater or if you're making some kind of cool like if you want to put like LEDs into a costume or something like that. That's to show other people. But haptics is more like you experience it. You don't really share it. Um,
Yeah.
but I wonder if you could. I wonder if there's like even like if you invented a secret haptic language, could you like communicate with someone else without speaking and you could be like standing next to each other silently communicating or like there's so many avenues you could go with the haptics. It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, there's certain products. I can't remember I think it's like One Band. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a haptic wristband, and it's designed for like a relationship. And you each have one, and you can actually like talk to each other using haptics, and you can use kind of like custom haptic effects to like communicate with them. So it's like a certain tap could mean like kiss, and it translates to like I mean, hey, I'm kissing you, or like a long pulse could be nudging you, or I miss you, or I'm thinking of you. So those types of things do exist. They're just not super popular, and yeah, not many people know about them. But it's like an intimate way to communicate with someone. So it's like you're in a meeting and it happens, like no one's gonna know, but you will. Just cute.
That's so cool. What's it called?
I think it's called One Band. I'll have to
Yeah.
find it. But there's like a few different products that do that. So it's like wrist wearable with haptics that's designed for a relationship. But imagine you could send them to your friends and bug each other with haptics randomly. I don't know how long you'd want to wear it after what one friend's like,
Just like
harassing
messing
you.
with each other.
Yeah, there's always that one.
That would be me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, for sure.
That's so funny. So, okay, one question
Mhm.
that I always like to ask is like how do you stay on top of how do you stay motivated? I'm sure you come across times where there's, you know, just struggles and you feel like burnt out or burnout. How do you stay motivated? How do you avoid burnout? Do you get burnout? How do you handle it if you do?
Yeah, it's so much. Honestly, I get burnt out constantly, just because I don't like to stop.
Mhm.
Because I constantly want to go, and I don't like sitting and doing nothing. It's just like it goes against my nature. Just the idea of it, I'm just like doing nothing. Ugh. I just want to be constantly learning, doing, achieving. But I think the problem with that is like once you've burnt out, you become like useless to like the tasks that you're even doing. So it's like to be able to write like a good newsletter, to be able to write like a good outreach email for work, it's just not going to happen. It's kind of like I'm going to hit like a brick wall of creativity, even thoughtfulness, like consciousness. And so typically for that, I just disconnect in some way. So like disconnecting is like crazy important to me. There's like ways that are useful for disconnecting. There are ways that just allow you to like stop thinking. So like gaming is one way where I can like disconnect and not think, but I find it's like I don't get as much out of gaming. It's more of just like shut my brain off. And then there's like a disconnecting and like doing something like taking some time to like use like post-it notes and a marker in like a room that's completely silent and just like debrief everything that's on my mind, like away from my phone, and just like anything that's bothering me, everything that's on my mind, I just like brain dump it. And that's one way where I can kind of overcome the barrier of burnout and use the time kind of wisely.
Yeah, I think you've got the right idea where if you're burnt out, taking a break from screens and
Yeah.
technology is a really good way to like actually take a
Yeah.
breath of fresh air because there's so much like happening all the time on a screen, any screen, whether it's like even if you have like a watch, you know, your
Yeah.
phone, your computer, there's so many ways to that's constantly screaming for your attention. The ads,
Yeah.
the alerts, the updates, the
Yeah.
pop-ups,
Yeah.
errors, the crashes. Like,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to like get into the. I've never been a poster person because I always like to
Oh,
have a
girl.
digital version.
You're messy.
I have
Well
posts on
done.
my wall.
Okay. Okay.
I'm trying, but you know
Okay.
what? I got post-its and I'm like writing them down. Like I'm doing the thing. I'm being good. Put the post up and they kept falling
Oh.
off. So I've got to tape them. Like this is defeats the
Yeah.
purpose of a post-it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, yeah, this post-it note's causing me more rage than serenity. Yeah, I had
Yeah.
a similar situation. So I had like a box, a huge box from like some Amazon shipment, and I cut the box open, and now it's like hideous, eyesore, but it's stuck to the box. So I just have a huge box of post-it notes, and that is
Ah,
actually kind of nice because I can put it in my closet and like hide it, bring it back out, hide my secrets. I've got people over. yeah, super handy. But it's just nice to like get away because I find if I'm on the computer doing this, I inevitably I'll be like, oh, what if I just need to check like I'll just check this, and I just can't fully get away from it all.
I know it's
It's
really
like
hard to do.
yeah, I just can't. It's me.
Yeah, I do that with if I'm doing like creative writing for a game, I will go to a coffee shop, put my phone
Mhm.
like away, turn it off, put it away, and like have a notebook, and like I'm not allowed to leave until I get this segment or this section written. And like sometimes it can be really painful, but it works. Like it really does. Like you, if there's nothing else to do, you will do it. And even like not too long ago, I sat down at a coffee shop and I had time to kill. And it was like quite a bit of time. I think it was like 4 hours. And so the first like hour or two, I got down my regular like to dos, got down all the things on my head, put it in a notebook. And then like I had extra time and I'm like, oh, I'm coming up with like all these solutions to the problem. I never like sat long enough without
Yeah.
distractions to actually like really. And I think writing it down helps too. Otherwise, I end up like ruminating or thinking the same thing over and over. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's definitely
amen.
something said to take a break.
Yeah, and like going to a new location is awesome. Whether it's like if even if it is the same kind of coffee shop you locate to, if you can try to go into a new one, just like going somewhere new really does help. Like it, as an introvert, I'm like, going out and seeing new things and being around humans, but it really is amazing to be able to like see new things and experience something, and your brain just kind of focuses on other things that are happening, and inevitably there'll be like an idea will pop up that you probably wouldn't have had if you weren't somewhere new around different people.
That's a really good point. Yeah. It's nice to be in like an environment that like matches what you're writing about or thinking about too, because then you kind of get into that mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you have like a lot of hobbies that are away from the screen? Obviously, you know, driving cars is not on a screen. Um, and writing, do you do your writing physical, like analog or digital?
Mostly digital. Oftentimes, like I'll start with like a notebook, and I'll kind of like that's where it'll begin is like brainstorming some thought, and I'll be like, oh, that's a curious idea, and I'll just make a note of it and then turn it into something later. In terms of other things I do, I'm trying to think of things that aren't digital. Like I not a huge sports person or like hiking kind of person, but I just love to get out and go see other things, whether it's like graffiti, love
Hmm.
music a whole lot, just experience cultural things and food.
Mm.
I love food. I will go pretty much anywhere for food.
Those are all good things to do. Yeah, I like those. Cool. Well, let's see. One last question for you. One last question. Oh, uh, do you keep track of your work? Do you keep a portfolio? Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, definitely. So when I was growing up, I didn't keep a portfolio, and so I did like a whole bunch of like design work, marketing work, and I feel like it just kind of like went out into the world, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I did this before, and then someone asks you, oh, can I see it? And you're like, I don't have it. So yeah, for now, like every time I do something, I just keep a track of it in a portfolio. Whether it's sometimes it's like a spread, not a spreadsheet, like a slide deck, like a presentation format. I'll just like snip it and put it in, and it's honestly like a cool thing to keep just for like your own legacy purposes, of like you could share with people that you love. Like here's some of the cool stuff I've done. It's also just good for like general like career wise. Like you should keep track of everything you do because after the fact is so much harder trying to dig through stuff, or like
Mhm.
websites sometimes go down or they look strange in a year or two. So I think that's something that I've encouraged like anyone I work with to do, is just like keep track of what you're working on, because it's cool to be able to go back and see, and like it literally is your legacy. It's like the videos you've created are part of your legacy, which is awesome. Like your Twitch stream, like each video is like this portion of time of your life as you're like creating something, and so that's kind of how I see it with just like taking snippets of like an article, or like I created this cool visual that I want to share, or like I was in the news with the lightsaber looking like a weirdo. Like here's
Yeah.
here's that. Like just all those types of things. Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good idea. That's cool. You've had some of those ways to like what's the word I'm like to capture that, to capture some of the things you've worked on. And you know, you make a good point. Like actually with streaming, I don't save my VOD, so it's kind of a little bit. ephemeral in the sense of like it's live, it's there for a bit, but then it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of enjoy like video creation, like YouTube stuff, because it does feel a bit more like a little package of like this is the topic, this is the thing, and then it's like it's saved there. It's you can come back to it and remember that time. It's like a little
Yeah.
journal. Devlogs are fun, right?
Yeah.
Do more of them. Cool.
Yeah. Do you have a portfolio? Do you keep some of the records of your work done?
No, I know. When I was doing graphic design, I did all. I would take screenshots of everything I worked on to have like everything captured, and now I don't remember half the stuff I do because I don't keep track of it.
Well, I
Good
hope
tip.
you consider it because like you're doing really cool stuff, and it's like future you will be like will want to like look back and either laugh at it, cry at it, or just like be like, man, she really knew her shit. She really kicked ass.
No, that's
Those are
actually a good point. You either look back and be like, "Wow, I grew from that," or
yeah
"I I wasn't." Yeah, it's not really a bad thing. Like either way, you're
yeah
agreeing with yourself, or you likely grew. So
yeah
that's a good idea. I should also keep like track of the game and the progress, so I can see
yeah
before and afters. That'd be fun.
exactly. That'd be super
Good
cool.
idea. Good
Good
idea.
content too. Good content.
True. Very good content. All right, Ash. Thank you so much for joining. It's been really nice chatting with you.
Yes,
Where
thanks so
can
much.
people find you if they want to look up what you do, find your newsletter, all that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, you can check me out on X, aka Twitter. I'm ChickTech, and then I'm also at Substack or haptics.substack.com is my newsletter.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you again, and we'll talk to you later. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
bye.